That's the I still not be moved. I still not be I still not be I still not be I still not be just like a tree. That's when I don't know what's there. I still not be moved. It's I still not be moved. Whoops. Well, that's the short version of that one. All right, all right, all right. Welcome to the Waycast. Glad to see each one of you here. That was Gracie Pike and I think her husband. I'm not sure. Thank her for allowing us to use her rendition of what I call "Anchored in Jehovah," or "I Shall Not Be Moved." And tonight we are in Revelations chapter 16, 18, somewhere along those lines. And I'll kind of do the introduction. This is Philip. And he will be doing my reading for me since I have lost my eyesight. And so the we have he has Daryl Shepard's version Through the Bible by J. Vernon McGee. And then this is, you've heard me allude to it. This is the copy that my uncle Amos gave me. I actually looked in the front of it. It was on my 21st birthday that he gave me this set of commentaries for Through the Bible. He listened to it faithfully at noon every day. I don't know if people have realized or found that he usually comes on Christian radio in about noon every day in most venues. It looks like we're live on YouTube and live on Rumble. I'm not finding us on Twitch and Facebook yet, but they may come and join us later. I don't know, or maybe Facebook has not been liking me, hasn't been letting me tag CR. Uh, the CR page on Facebook here recently. So while you're reading, I may do that, but I'm going to try to follow along with you in case there's something we need to help you with. But you can go ahead and start reading.
All right. So in the chapter before us, we see the judgment of commercial Babylon and reaction of both earth and heaven to it.
Okay, and the theme of this chapter is the political and commercial Babylon judged, by the way.
Yes. In chapters 17 and 18, two Babylons are brought before us. The Babylon of chapter 17 is ecclesiastical, and the Babylon of chapter 18 is economic. The first is religious, and the first is religious, the apostate church, which has entered the Great Tribulation period. The second is political and commercial. The commercial center is loved by the kings of the earth, and the apostate church is hated by the kings of the earth. As we saw in chapter 17, the apostate church is destroyed by the kings of the earth. When Christ returns, political Babylon will be destroyed by the judgment of God. Obviously, Babylon, mystery.
Yes, mystery.
Sorry. Obviously, mystery Babylon, the apostate church is destroyed first in the midst of the Great Tribulation, while commercial Babylon will be destroyed at the second coming of Christ. These two Babylons are not one and the same city. I personally Oh, sorry. I personally believe that Mystery Babylon is Rome, and that when it goes down in the midst of the Great Tribulation, the religious center shifts to Jerusalem because it is at Jerusalem that the false prophet will put up his image of the Antichrist to be worshipped. commercial commercial Babylon is ancient Babylon rebuilt as a commercial capital of the world. This city is the final capital of the political power of the beast. A few years ago, it seemed rather far fetched that the power could reach back into the Mid East, but since then we have experienced a shortage of energy, and when they cut off the oil supply, the whole world feels it. They wield tremendous power. The wealth of the world is moving into that particular area because of the oil price of oil. It could well become the great commercial capital of the world, and this great commercial center, which will be Babylon rebuilt, will be destroyed at the second coming of Christ. Okay.
One of
Sometime.
the things that's interesting there is, if I interject, is that the from when the time McGee wrote this till now, things have changed. He wrote this in the early 70s.
Mhm.
There was a oil crisis in the early 70s with Nixon,
Mhm.
and Nixon had to had to do with our gold standard. We'd come off the gold standard, and
Yep.
they had to he had to evaluate our gold
Mhm.
and bring it up to current value. It hadn't been assessed since they'd taken it off the gold standard in '64,
Mhm.
and so that car created a oil embargo because they didn't know if we had the money to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's why they stopped giving us oil. In the late '70s, in Jimmy Carter's time, again we had another oil embargo, but it was because they wanted to hike up the price.
Mhm.
And I remember, there was a trucker strike, and people said, this is before you were born,
Yes.
but I remember truckers sitting at the end of my road there, and because the truckers would use the old road,
Mhm.
that to get to, well, that was before the parkway was built, I guess. Come to think of it, but they would have like blockades. They were trying to stop rogue truckers from that came out of this oil embargo. But one of the things is that was why it was so important that we found. I think we found in the Gulf. Didn't we find one of the largest oil?
There was one there, and then there was one in Alaska.
Yes, that's what I was getting ready to say. We read the same news, but that set us up for life, or not being able to, where we're not dependent upon the Middle East any longer. It is a good point that because that's one of the things you see in Revelation is touch not the oil. And so, I often make, after Kuwait, when they burned the oil fields,
Mhm.
whenever the Iraq left, it kind of made you think that, maybe that's what they're talking about, not the drinking oil, but not the riches, is what how J. Vernon McGee would interpret it. But don't touch the oil fields, don't burn them as you're retreating. I don't know, but but that's one of the things Jay Vernon is very, I like that he's not going to go out on a limb.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful.
Mhm.
But he does say a lot of things that are in his time,
Mhm.
and this is one of them, that they were depending upon them for oil, but
Mhm.
no longer really are we.
Mhm.
Which is, even though I guess the globalists would like for us to be, but it seems like they stopped
Pipelines.
they stopped our production of oil during
Mhm.
Biden, and so it seems like that goes against what they need to happen. So
Yeah.
but anyway, go ahead, Rick. You remember where we were?
Let's see. Let's see. Price of oil in this commercial spirit crisis. Okay, here we go. Some time ago, a Jew challenged the Israeli minister of tourism by saying, "How does it come out of all that come about that all the countries surrounding Israel have oil, but Israel doesn't? His reply was this: God gave the Arabs oil and the Jews the Bible. Do you want to exchange? Do you want to exchange with them? God forbid. The oil will run out quick enough, but the Bible will last forever. There had been some disagreement among the conservative um, expositors. There we go, about whether or not the ancient Babylon will be rebuilt. Candidly, for many years, I took the position it would not be rebuilt. However, I believe now that it will be rebuilt. Isaiah 13, 19, and 22 speaks of the fact that the ancient Babylon is to be rebuilt and destroyed, and this destruction is what is mentioned in chapter 18 of Revelation, which is before us. Actually, I don't think it could be rebuilt on the same spot because the Euphrates River has moved about 14 miles from the ancient city.
And
Now, that being said, I'm going to beat you to this.
reread this in the books, right? Go ahead.
Well, so no, I don't know about history books, but I was saying, isn't the Euphrates the one that they're talking about that is dried up, or was that
In Revelations, it's dried up in the.
Well, I was talking about now. I had seen stuff that it was dried
Oh, really?
up. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Because that was.
And that could just be clickbait too. But I mean, I had been seeing it over the last couple of years.
Probably is, but it is. That was. I think that was in the last chapter, wasn't it, guys?
Yeah, probably was. But I remember it talks about
the Euphrates dries up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably is, but I
Yeah.
couldn't see that because it's like the Mississippi or something.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's a huge river. Yeah.
But now my understanding that drying up is not just it's drying up, that has like a more meaning to it. Like there's more to it than just that river drying up.
Well, we covered this. I think it was last chapter. Is that you probably haven't had time to catch up with me,
I'm
but
busy.
but the armies from the east, well, it was dried up so that they can come and march on Israel.
Yeah.
And so that was the reason. It is one of the. Was it one of? I've kind of lost track whether it was a bowl or or a trumpet, but I think it's one. I think it's one of the bowls in
The bowls of wrath.
Yeah, but one of the bowls from Wrath in chapter 15. We're actually back there.
Oh, sorry.
And so that's why my memory is like, okay, that happened yesterday. I don't remember what happened yesterday. But but no, what I was going to say was, I don't know if you remember this, but Saddam Hussein was actually rebuilding Babylon. And I googled it while he was reading, while I was listening to this yesterday, and I thought that he stopped it, whenever he died, but it wasn't whenever he died. It was actually when we invaded. When the United States invaded Iraq, that stopped the construction of Babylon. And actually, they say they have built. It's made it. It may be more difficult to rebuild because they built some helipads there. Part of our invasion was building infrastructure on Babylon. Yeah, but so it came to my mind again. Everybody's thinking about rebuilding the temple, but really we need Babylon to be rebuilt. So we're not anywhere near. They're not, but probably in 3.5 years, with intense effort, like if they had Trump in charge, they probably could rebuild. Of course, he's talking about rebuilding the Gaza Strip, make him in paradise in his administration. So,
well, I mean, he's an ambitious man.
So you could build a a city there.
Yeah.
That would be kind of what that you would see there. It wouldn't have the long life because as we're going to read, it has a lot of um, a lot there.
Fair enough. All right, let's see.
Here at the end of
Yes.
that paragraph.
There are views of the destruction of Babylon which are diametrically opposed to each other. The viewpoint and perspective are highly important. Um, the reaction of men of business and politics is one of great anguish. To them, it is the depth of tragedy. It means that the total bankruptcy of big business. The second reaction is that of heaven. It is one of the joy. It is one of joy that the holiness and justice of God is vindicated. It means the end of man's sinful career on earth. This will bring to an end the great tribulation period.
And that concludes the introduction section. Now we're going to move on to section two or one.
Or one.
One and two. Verses 1 and 2.
Okay.
We did have some comments. Let me see.
Okay.
Well, it's just they're saying hi question mark. So far, so that's I was going to give them kudos, but I can't read their. Let me see. The first one, the guy with question marks was he didn't go to his channel. What did it do? Go to his channel, but anyway. And view channel activity, go to channel. There we go. It was Oatman Baldera. So hey, Oatman Baldera, thanks for watching.
Hello.
And then this hey, the guy said hey is let's see, it's Paisley and Charla, we love church. They have a video. Looks like church singing. So maybe I want to follow them. Okay, I'm going to subscribe to you guys. You guys look cool. Okay, and then I think that's about it. There's no comments on that. Was on YouTube, by the way. I got looks like there's we got a heart just then on Facebook. Probably LaRonda's watching on Facebook, if I had to guess. But okay, so go ahead.
All right. Announcement and fall of commercial and political Babylon. Chapter 18 begins with another angel who comes down from heaven with a message. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Revelations 18:1. As usual, I'll give my literal I'll get it out, translation of the Greek text throughout this chapter. After these things, I saw another angel coming down out of heaven, having great authority, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Again, we have this very interesting statement after these things.
Meta
Ta, Tata,
Tauta.
Tata.
Tauta.
Yeah.
It's meta tauta.
Okay.
It's the Greek.
And then
After what things?
yes, after what things? After the after the series of sevens and after the judgment of religious Babylon come these things. Progress has definitely been made through the seven seals and the seven trumpets, the seven personages, and the seven bowls of wrath. And we are advancing to the end of the great tribulation. In fact, this is bringing us to the end of the great tribulation. John says, "I saw." He's still a spectator. He saw another angel, which takes us back to chapter 14, where a series of six angels is mentioned, each with the sole identification of another angel. This angel is a divine, supernatural messenger of God, but faceless and nameless. He has great authority, power, which indicates that he has a superior rank to the other another angel, and he is bringing an important message. The earth was lightened with his glory, seems to further signify the prestige of this angel. Ezekiel 43:2.
Yeah, keep reading.
And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Wow. Uh, I actually don't remember that verse.
Right.
And he shouted with a mighty voice, saying, fell is Babylon the Great, and became a habitation of demons and a prison, hold, cage of every unclean spirit, and a prison or cage of every unclean and hated bird.
Yep. That's the Megaeus Absurdus translation he gives. He translates the Greek into English after each verse.
Okay. The preliminary announcement of the fall of Babylon was made in Revelations 14:8, and there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of wrath of her fornication. The angel here is greater in authority than the one who made the first announcement. The words fell is Babylon and became. The tense in Greek is prophetic aorist,
Aorist. Yeah.
which speaks of coming events as if they have already transpired. When God says something is going to happen, you can speak about it as though it had already happened, because it is going to happen. It is just that sure. God's plan and program, it is just as though it had already taken place because he has known the end from the beginning. Babylon, this great commercial center of the world, is going to be destroyed. A habitation of demons and a cage of every unclean spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hated bird. This indicates that Babylon is where demons of the spirit world and unclean birds of the physical world will be incarnated during the millennium. The prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah confirm this. See Isaiah 13:19 through 22, and Jeremiah 50:38 through 40. These prophecies find a final fulfillment in the destruction of literal Babylon. Here in Revelations 18, if this is true, there is no prophecy which forbids Babylon from being rebuilt. Babylon is the headquarters of the demons and has been the place of rebellion down through the years.
Okay. Is that our breaking point?
Oop. Maybe, I mean, I don't think so. Is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That concludes section verses 1 and 2. And now we'll go on to section verses 3 and 4. Actually, I was thinking, as I was reading that verse, it kind of reminded me of some movies.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what movie that was, where the guys are in the Iraqi war,
Mhm.
and they go in and and there's like this this pit they go in, and I think there's this woman that's entombed there.
Mhm.
She used to be like a Egyptian queen.
Mm,
Now is it ringing a bell?
yeah.
And they bring her to back to the United States, and then this guy uses her for evil purposes, but anyway.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
That would kind of congregate. That's one of the things. In a prior chapter, there were 4 demons were released from the river Euphrates, and so it's kind of we're seeing that Babylon we always thought of Egypt as being, well, it represents the world.
Mhm.
Well, Babylon would represent the demon world.
Mm.
It is this like the seat of demonic activity. So I'm surprised there's not more horror movies about Babylon, but they haven't gone on yet. They don't want to let the secret out yet.
Not yet, not yet. But if you have noticed that I would say watching movies in general, that evil does portray out a lot of what they have done or what they are doing,
Right.
and they flaunt it right in front of you.
Right. I'm learning to watch movies with that viewpoint now, rather
Yeah.
than that they're telling you what they're doing.
Yeah.
And instead of watching the movies for blindly like most people do.
Yes.
This will never happen. Well, it's because what it is they get us used to this. Oh well, that's just a conspiracy theory.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
they make movies about that when it's not real, and so that's what they're trying to do. Is
Desensitize us to it.
desensitize us to
Yep.
it. I'm surprised there's not rioting's going on since the electric's off and looting, mass looting, and the other stuff. But anyway, because I mean that's what they have gotten us kind of desensitized to.
Mhm.
If electric goes out, you look.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Go to the grocery store and you steal all the.
Especially in the last 5 years. I mean, when the pandemic hit, that's when I mean those. I know that there's been worse things in history, but in my history, those riots were the worst that I remember.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I had never seen anything like that growing up.
Well, apparently there was, as I read through J. Vernon McGee, there was those in the early 70s,
Mhm.
late 60s, early 70s. They had similar. They tried to burn down
Yeah.
cities, and the same thing, with the Black Panthers and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. You had you've seen movies where I'm
Yeah.
sure that how things used to be, and and we're seeing that again. The another generation kind of they had thought that we've forgotten. It's 50 years later. That or 55 years later, and now they're doing the same thing again to do the same thing all over again. But it doesn't seem to have worked.
Okay.
But I did think it was interesting whenever I listened to this. It sounded like that some horror movies were based upon it.
Right.
But anyway, so now section verses 3 and 4.
And 4. Okay. All right. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Revelations 18:3.
The Megaeus Absurdus translation is
For by for by the wine of the wrath of her fornication, all the nations have drunk or are fallen, and the kings of the earth committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth waxed rich by the power of her wantonness.
And the reason I call it the Megaeus Absurdus translation, because that's what he calls it. He says that he can't recommend it to anybody. He doesn't recommend any translations to anybody, but and that they call it there the Megaeus Absurdus.
I like it.
Okay.
All right. Have drunk or are fallen are the two permitted renderings. Both have good manuscript authority. Both are true. The normal rendering is have drunk. This is God's judgment on big business, which denies God authority. This is the unholy alliance of government and business. We have seen some of this in our day, and frankly, it smells to high heaven. I agree. The word for merchants means those who travel. It is not those who produce goods or manufacture goods, but those who are brokers engaging in business for a big profit. Business is a sacred cow that nothing must harm or hinder. This is true today, of course. Man uses business as his biggest excuse for having no time for God. Yet these will judge godless commercialism. Big business is in for it. I can assure you of that. In fact, it has had a rough time in our day. And then this next one is chapter 4.
Verse 4.
Verse 4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, and ye be not partakers of her sin, and that ye receive not her plagues." Revelations 18:4.
The McGee's Absurdist translation.
Yes. Uh, and I heard another voice out of heaven saying, "Come forth out of her, my people, that ye have no fellowship with her sins, and that ye receive not her plagues." This verse reveals that God's people are going to be in the world to the very end. It is not speaking of the church, which has already been removed before the Great Tribulation began. But God will have his people on earth during the tribulation. Wait, yeah, God will have. Okay. The question has always, I just want to make sure I read that right. The question has always been, will they be able to make it through? That is, will they remain faithful to Christ? Yes, they do make it through. Remember that God started with 144,000, and the number that will make it through the tribulation is 144,000.
And then what you were tripped up on is his people. He's talking about the Jews,
Yes.
not the Christians, and so it made you question.
Yeah, for a second, and then I read back over it.
Oh, okay.
And then the 144,000. This is what are they? The
12,000 from each tribe.
Yeah, but the people that go door to door.
The Jehovah Witness believes
Yes.
that they are. Yeah, I ran into a guy on Threads the other day. He got into a discussion with me about it, and so I had never heard. They actually have now a new way of dealing with it. Those are in the resurrection or whatever. But then he's not in it, so he he believes he gets to choose at the Irene judgment, the judgment at the end.
Mhm.
He gets to choose whether he's going to go to heaven or hell.
Mm.
And so I had never heard that, but
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't heard
I
that.
hadn't heard.
See, I used to stop
And-
Jehovah's Witnesses all the time and ask them.
But so I said today is the day of salvation. I choose you this day whom you will serve, whether
Yes.
it's God or mammon. As for me and my house, we choose the Lord.
Yes.
Well, he didn't like the word Lord because it needs to be translated Jehovah.
Ah,
See, they have their own Bible.
yeah, interesting.
And Lord is translated Jehovah throughout it. And so I said, and so since he had a trouble with that, I said, "You're a Jehovah Witness." And he said, "Just because I'm using the Bible to prove my point, you're wanting to claim, but yes, I'm Jehovah Witness." And so I was like, "Well, I thought that you guys believed in 144,000." Then he explained it to me. I didn't really understand it, don't really need to understand it, but and I said, "Well, I thought in 1935 that the 144,000th person in your religion died, causing you a problem now that you have to work harder than he did and knock him out of his place." And so I didn't hear back from him.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But yes, that's the religion of the 144,000. So
Okay. Yes.
the period after the 144,000 is where you're at.
Yes. This is like the parable the Lord Jesus told about the shepherd who started out with the 100 sheep and the one of them that got away. But he didn't end up with 99, he ended up with 100 because he went out and got that little sheep that was lost. The one who is speaking in this verse is none other than the Son of God, and he is calling his people out of Babylon before the judgment comes. It is the physical separation with a uh, corollary,
Corollary.
corollary.
I have no idea.
Okay, works for me.
He uses words that are above my pay grade.
So I'm usually really good with words, but some of these, that's why I knew I needed to look.
Corral. The root is corral.
Yeah.
It is a physical separation with a corral, and it's a reed. It's regarding a corral
Yeah.
in the experience of Lot in Sodom.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's in the same, what we would call in math, the circle. Let's see, what is it? Anyway, I forget where we. Go ahead.
As Lot was warned to get out of Sodom to escape the deluge
Deluge. Okay.
of fire. uh, See Genesis 19. So these people are. So these people of God are warned. God's word tells us, when thou art in tribulation and all these things are come upon thee, even in the latter days, if thou turn to the Lord thy God and shalt be obedient unto his voice. For the Lord thy God is a merciful God. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers, which he sware unto them. Deuteronomy 4:30-31. Um, Such was also God's warning to Israel in Jeremiah 51:5-6. And 45. And in Isaiah 48:20, the warning is twofold. They are to have, oh, sorry.
Number one.
Okay. Number one, they are to have no fellowship with the sin of Babylon. And number two, they are to flee before judgment falls.
Right. See, there's a different way that you read and a different way that you preach.
Yeah.
You want to exaggerate some things, but anyway. Anytime you see points coming up, if you want to exaggerate those.
Okay. I think I think this has a pertinent application for us today. It should be a warning to us, not that God will fail to save his own from this hour, but that he wants us to be separate, not indulging in the old nature, but walking by the Spirit. If we will not deal with sin in our own lives, here and now by confessing and forsaking it, he will deal with it. Either he will judge sin now, or it will meet us at the end at the judgment seat of Christ. God gives us the opportunity of judging our sin today. For if we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the world. 1 Corinthians 11:31-32.
So when I said about the Jehovah's Witnesses relevant, it means today.
Yes.
He can choose his judgment today.
Yes.
Or later to be judged with the world.
That was one thing I learned after many years of running in the world was I would rather judge myself than it have to get to God and let him correct me. I've been corrected enough times in my life that I fear that correction now.
Okay.
Okay. How can we judge our own sin? 1 John 1:9 has the answer. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. To confess means to say the same thing that God says about it. It means to take God's viewpoint and say, God, I agree with you. What I did was sin. It is so easy to make excuses for our own sin. We say that ours is not really sin, of course. If our neighbors do it, it is sin. Yeah. But until you and I are willing to call uh, our sin, we haven't confessed it at all. If we refuse to judge ourselves, we will be judged at the judgment seat of Christ. The sins of some folks will not be settled until they stand before the judgment seat of Christ. I hope to get all of my accounts straightened out down here. Just because God may not take us to the woodshed immediately does not mean that he is letting us get by without punishment. He doesn't spank the devil's children, but if you are his child, judgment will come to you. And then that's the end of that section 4.
Your list straight goes.
Okay.
It says my notes are in that book.
All right. Sounds good.
And if you like the idea of having a book that was well worn. Yes, that was the end of section verses 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And now we're moving on to section verses 5 and 8. So I try to make that transition. It also gives me a way to be able to break it up on the or make highlights. Then I can make each section a highlight. So if we're gonna edit this out. So
Fair enough.
sorry you're watching it live stream, but it will get edited out in the long run. So verse 5.
5. All right. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Revelations 18:5. Babylon has a long history of accumulated sins, and God has the record. It is one of the oldest cities in the history of mankind and is probably mentioned more than any other city in the Bible, with the exception of Jerusalem. Finally, judgment breaks like a flood upon this city and its system. The judgment of God may be delayed, but it is sure. It may seem to us that the unbeliever is getting by with sin, but God's judgment is coming. All right. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. And in the cup which she hath fill her. Wow, sorry, I'm struggling on that one. Okay. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. There we go. Revelations 18:6.
The Megaeus Absurdus translation is
Render unto her even as she also rendered, and double unto her as the double according to her works. In the cup which she mingle into her double. Be honest, I don't think I understand that one.
okay. Well, let's see what that he says, and then we'll
Talk about it.
Talk about it.
Okay. This is poetic justice. See Obadiah 15. The cup of iniquities is being fulfilled to the brim. When the last drop is poured in, it is pressed to the lips of those who committed iniquity. My friend, this is just. Read Psalms 137. God is right and just in what he does.
Okay. So what's your question?
To be honest, it like that whole section there, it kind of and it didn't make
This one
sense.
verse?
Yeah.
Okay. Reward her even as she rewarded you.
Mm-hmm.
She uh, so she's getting what that she deserved, the full measure of what that she deserves, right?
Okay.
Her reward.
Yeah. Just rewards.
Her just reward. Okay. So unto her double according to her works. And so it's actually going to be not only what she
Deserves
but
double.
but double.
Okay, that makes sense.
And a double portion according to her works. You know, everybody wants to be judged according to their works. Well, then she's going to get a double reward for her works.
Yeah, it's one of the times I want to cry grace.
Yeah. And in the cup which she has fill to her double. So it's like it's saying the same 3 times.
Mhm.
That's why that I'm saying is when we preach something or you're reading the Bible, we need to emphasize things. And so you're like 1, 2, 3, and here lots of times the Bible will emphasize things in threes
Mm.
3 times, so that hopefully people will get it, but they don't.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But here, this city Babylon, great horror, she's going to get a double portion, not triple portion. We're getting a triple version of her double portion.
Ah, yikes. All right. So, verse 7. All right. How much she hath glorified herself and lived uh, deliciously. Is that the right? Is that
Yes.
okay? Just want to make sure. So much torment and sorrow give her, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and I am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Revelations 18:7. How much soever she glorified herself and waxed wanton, lived in luxury, so much give her of torment and mourning, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and I am no widow, and I shall in no wise see mourning. Um, sorry, excuse me just for a second. All right, let's see. You see, the prosperity of Babylon blinded her to the judgment of God. Trading was active on the stock market, and everyone bought blue chip issues right up to the moment of judgment. Luxury, arrogance, pride, sin, and self deception characterized the spirit of this godless city. World peace was in sight, and optimism was the spirit of the day. Only the prophets of gloom issued a warning, and they were classified as squares. Was Noah, and as Vernon McGee is today. Let's see, and then verse 8. Therefore, shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. Revelations 18:8. This calls our attention to the suddenness of the destruction, and that it will be by fire. So great is her grief that mourning is counted as a plague along with death and famine. Wow. I mean, that would have to be pretty bad mourning for mourning to be considered a plague. I mean, that's bad. um, let's see. Death, mourning, and famine are the three horsemen who ride roughshod over Babylon. The destruction is total and final. In the scripture, it is the first city of prominence, but it is long, eventful, and sinful history ends with the judgment of God upon her. For strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. It is God who destroys the city, because he alone is able to do it. He does this, we believe, at the return of Christ. Notice this as Isaiah predicts it. Who is that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from the Zoram? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments like him that tradeth into the wine vat? I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me. For I will tread them in mine anger and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my raiments. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed is come. Isaiah 63, 1 through 4. Um, in his second coming, Christ is seen coming from Edom with blood sprinkled garments. It is my belief that He has come by way of Babylon and has executed judgment upon that wicked city. We will see Christ's second coming in the following chapter. Let's see. Next, we will see the reaction to the destruction of the great center. There will be anguish in the world, and we will see who attends her funeral. Also, there will be anticipation of joy in heaven because of the judgment of Babylon. These are the two diametrically opposite viewpoints. It will be bad for one crowd and good for the other crowd.
All right. Like one of the things we were is Haley's, but is watching on Facebook, by the way. Hi, Haley. Glad you're watching.
Alright.
And giving us hearts. As long as we talk, she's like hitting the heart button. So we appreciate that. I noticed that from Gloria, and she does that there too. The but here you were talking about the morning, but you have to think about this. You know, if an atomic bomb went off in New York City or Vegas or LA,
Mhm.
you know, it would just be kind of devastating to certain people. It might not be to us. We'd be like, oh, good riddance.
Yeah, like, well, that's a tragedy. Like, yeah.
But to you know, if Wall Street was destroyed, that would destroy the whole world's ability um, to age
Oh, I'm here.
1,039.
Yep, I'm good. Sorry.
And so,
Yeah, that would definitely affect everything.
yeah, it would still affect you if New York City was destroyed because the stock market would, you know, and the destruction of the stock market would send the world into a total collapse and total destruction,
Yeah.
a depression, you know, like we saw in the 30s, and that's it is what is happening here because you know that's what they had was peace and prosperity for 3.5 years, and then now everything's going to change, and so in a day, uh, or is it say an hour? I can't remember. But anyway, and the next section that was section verses 5 and 8. Now we're going to move on to section verses 9 and 10.
All right. Anguish in the world because of Babylon's judgment. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her. And when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Revelations 18, 9 through 10.
I was getting ahead of myself. The media's absurdist translation is
And the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived deliciously in luxury with her shall weep and wail over her when they look upon the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Woe, woe, the great city of Babylon, the strong city, for in 1 hour thy judgment have come. In that day, Babylon will dominate and rule the world. The capital of the Antichrist will be Babylon, and he will have the first total dictatorship. The world will become an awful place. In that day, everything will center in Babylon. The stock market will be read from Babylon, not New York. Babylon instead of Paris will be set the styles for the world. Um, a play to be successful will have to be a success in Babylon, not London. Everything in that city will be in rebellion against Almighty God, and it centers in Antichrist. Interesting. No one dreamed that this great city would be judged. Yet, by the time the sun goes down, Babylon is nothing but smoldering ruins. When the news goes out, the world is stunned, and then begins the wail. The whole world will howl when Babylon goes down. I imagine that if you were on the moon, you would have to tune down your earphones because the howl would be so loud. In chapter 17, we saw that the kings of the earth hated religious Babylon and that and that Antichrist got rid of it in order that he might be worshipped without any competition in the area of religion. And the kings of the earth joined in her destruction. Okay. All right. And then, wait a minute, did I skip something?
In contrast to the
Oh, I did. I skipped a page. There we go. In contrast to this, here in chapter 18, we see that the kings of the earth love commercial Babylon because the revenue she brought to their coffers. In fact, it is called here fornication. You can't find a better word for it than that. The lobbyists were in Babylon, not Washington, D.C. They were representing all the great corporations in the world. But the kings desert Babylon like rats leaving a sinking ship. Their mourning is both pathetic and contemptible. They eulogize her with paneg- panegrius, panagius, pangrius, Greeks. I don't know that word.
yeah,
Of praise.
following your with sorry.
Is they eulogize her with ships. They marvel. Isn't that different? Yeah. Paneg.
Panagirius. Panagirius. There it is. I found it.
Okay.
Of praise.
Of praise. But there is a hopelessness in their anguish. They marvel at the sudden destruction of that which they thought was gilt-edged security. The judgment came in the space of 1 hour, reminding us that the sudden devastation caused by an atomic explosion. This is a frightening picture presented to us, and it is the final conflagration.
Yeah.
Okay. That and catastrophic judgment that will bring Christ to the earth to set up his kingdom.
Conflagration. There's no E in between the G and R. But anyway, he does use very large words, but then he brings it down. Everybody thinks that he talks on their level. I guess he does. He talks on everybody's level. One of the things that comes to mind here is, when you I knew somebody that was from LA, and they hated it here because they would say there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, you were from Cincinnati, so you kind of I don't know if you kind of feel that. I mean, I remember there was people. Well, they got in trouble the last time they had the jazz festival up there. But I knew people who came from Lexington that went up there for the jazz festival and different things, and so and we go up there for Kings Island, and it's kind of it's the place to go, not Lexington.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. So I like going to visit places like that, but I don't like to live in places like that. I like to live close enough that I can drive to it and visit. But it's just there's just too much going on there.
But this shows us why that we shouldn't uh, be like the person I knew where it said, well, I hate it here because there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
Well, that's because there's no sin.
Yes.
There's less sin here than in those places. That's and so that's why that it's causing you to want to go there and live. Now this individual lives in San Francisco, so they claim to be a Christian, but I don't. Obviously not. But, so that concludes that section, which was section verses 9 and 10. Now we move on to section 11 through 17.
Yes. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and of fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thine. Oh, that's spelled different than thine now. Or is that how it's spelled? Wood and all manner of vessel of ivory.
Yeah, Thion.
Thion.
It's a type of wood.
That's what I was thinking. It was I wasn't pronouncing it right. Thion wood. Okay. And all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of most precious wood, of all of brass and iron and marble, and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horse and chariots and slaves and souls of men. Wow. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. Revelations 18:11 through 17.
You guys have given us an McGee's Absurdist translation this time.
Nope. So you thought that was straightforward enough?
Oh, well, he explains it. It's not straightforward enough, right? But he does explain it. So let's read the explanation.
All right.
And then see if you have any questions.
All right. As you read these verses, did you feel as you might be window shopping down at the main street for main street of some of our great cities? In our store windows, we see all these things in our day. These are the products of an affluent society. And these things were available to the Roman Empire in John's day. Babylon will make these luxury items necessities just as we think these items are necessities today. You will not find a cotton dress or a pair of overalls anywhere on this list. In this list, I like my overalls. Thank you very much.
They're luxuries. That's what he's trying to say.
I remember when glazed Beatrice. Oh yeah. Glazed Beatrice terracotta bathtubs first were introduced in this country. Incidentally, it was opposed by the doctors in our land. They said that if you took a bath every day, it would shorten your life. They felt a bath once a week or once a month was enough. In those days.
Well, you remember they got it. They said that the hand sanitizer was not healthy because it removed your natural bacteria. Well, I'm sure that they said the same thing about taking a bath once a day rather than once a week or once a month.
Yeah,
you're making yourself too clean. I guess they would think. They're probably wrong. They're probably wrong about the antibacterial.
probably.
As well.
I don't know. I've kind of gotten to the notion of usually whatever they say, go do the opposite.
Okay.
Because usually what they're saying is not.
If they tell you to take Tylenol, don't take them.
Exactly.
It'll kill you.
All right. Let's see. Okay.
This is the end of the paragraph, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. All right. Let's look at these items using my literal translation. We will take them up. We will take them up separately. And the merchants of earth weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise, cargo, anymore. Merchandise, cargo of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls. Talk about a depression. They are having one. No one buys their merchandise or cargo anymore. In Babylon, there is merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls. You see, we are in the jewelry department here. Um, then when we move from the jewelry department to the ladies ready to wear and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet, then to the luxury gift department and all fine citron wood. Hmm. Okay, I knew citron wood. I never heard of cyan though.
Okay. Yeah.
But and sorry, uh,
What is citron wood?
it's just a type of wood, like from a type of tree.
Okay. Is it a hardwood, softwood,
Um,
or would you know?
I would say it's like medium hard.
Okay. But
And
it must be decorative.
yes,
It must have like all kinds of little
yeah, it's got like
twiddly cues in
yeah,
the.
it's a beautiful wood to use. Like you would use it on more ornate things.
Right.
Um, and you wouldn't use it as like framing or something like that for a house. Uh, all right.
Well, they used to use oak.
This is true. This is true. Those houses are still standing.
Hardwood is more sturdy than pine. I was noticing they're going to I don't remodel the dog in Richmond,
Mhm.
and one of the things I noticed in it was that it would have to have major renovations to bring it up to code. Well, it's
Yeah.
made out of brick and oak.
Yep.
Maybe they need to tear all the houses down or buildings down around it. And build them like it was built.
Right.
Make them build them like that one was built, and see
It lasts a lot longer.
It will last. It'll be standing there. Actually, I think all the other buildings around it are gone. But anyway,
All right.
it's there by itself.
And every vessel of ivory, and every vessel made of the most precious wood, and of brass and iron and marble. We move on to the spice and cosmetic department, and cinnamon and spice, uh, amon, amon, and odors and ointments and frankincense. They have great deal of spray deodorants. You see, probably the kind that works 24 hours a day. Now we go to the liquor department, and
Well, they had oils in them
yes.
that made them stay on the body.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And we had to explain that to Braden that he not to spray his expensive cologne on his vestige
Mhm.
because it will stain your clothing.
Mhm.
You have to spray it and then walk into it
Mhm.
because the oil afterwards to spatter and
Mhm.
it will
Disperse.
be a glob
Yeah.
of oil. And so that's you don't think about that until you're spending a lot of money for cologne.
Yes. Yeah, the expensive colognes they use, what is it, whale grits or something like that. It's a product that comes from, I believe, whale vomit, actually, and it's supposed to be one of the best oils or whatever in the world to make perfumes out of.
Okay. Yeah, I can believe that it's the most grossest things
Of course.
perfumes are made out of. That's the point. Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry.
You're wearing vomit, people. That's what
Remember that next time you
that's what the
spray.
devil wants. He's laughing at you.
Guys going around spraying vomit all over themselves. All right. Now we go to the liquor department and the pastry center, and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat. This is the food of the rich. Barley is the food of the poor. The wealthy were eating gourmet food and enjoying luxury until Babylon went down. We move on to the meat
I
department.
can't help but think, because gr- the more you refine it, the worse it is for you.
Yes.
So they're killing themselves with these dainties. But anyway, go ahead.
But you know what I find funny is the food that back in the day was actually fed to poor people is now a lot of them are considered like high end delicacies and things like that. So like lobsters, what was it? Escargot, the caviar, things like that. That was considered low end garbage food, and a lot of peasants ate that like way, 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 way back in the day. And then as time went on, people realized, and so now it's flip flopped, and we're eating the garbage parts of these animals, and
And
it's the most expensive
now
part.
poor people are eating the garbage
Yes,
that we used to, junk food.
yes,
So that's all they can afford.
it's flopped around. Um, All right, we move on to the meat department where you can get porterhouse steaks, lamb chops, and filet mignon, and cattle and sheep. The merchandise covers every phase of business. The articles are for a society accustomed to better things of material universe. Even men were bought and sold, including their souls. I think this is becoming more and more true today, where great corporations have men on the payroll uh, who are bound. They're almost like slaves. Okay, sorry. Right now there is many as women selling their souls, just merchandise of horses and chariots and slaves, bodies and souls of men.
That you're having trouble reading it because you're thinking about what it's saying, not that you're reading
Yes.
because this is what that you were having trouble with in the verse is they were selling their souls. How
Yes.
can we sell our souls? But really, and most people don't think about it, uh, but more and more so, it's helped with Trump lowering the interest rates on credit cards to 10%.
Mhm.
But still, you by and large, American society are slaves
Mhm.
to debt.
Yes.
That's why the financial freedom of Dave Ramsey
Mhm.
is so important to teach men to how not to become enslaved to their debt. You're basically selling your soul to the bank,
Yeah.
because or to the university you went or the credit card company. Especially when it was 30% interest.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, um, that's that doubles every 2 years. Your principal, and there's a roll of 70. You take the interest rate and divide it into 70, and that's how often your principal will double.
Oh wow.
And so 35%, you're doubling your principal every 2 years. And so there's no way you're going to be able to keep up with that. And you're a slave to that. And that's what we're saying here. And people need to wake up and realize that they are selling themselves.
Yeah.
They're like, well, they want to look down upon the uh, people who founded the country,
Mhm.
but really it's still going on.
Yeah.
Everybody is more of a slave today,
Mhm.
because you can even now you can borrow your Grubhub, or
Oh wow.
yeah, you
I didn't
can,
know that.
yes, you can put that
Credit.
on credit. These companies like DoorDash,
Wow.
they have like credit.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous.
I, I didn't know it until I was watching a podcast and they were talking about this. Well, Charlie Kirk was talking. He was talking with Tucker Carlson about this problem we have in America,
Mhm.
where the men were basically slaves.
Yeah.
You're selling your soul. It doesn't. It may be metaphorically, but you're selling. You're becoming a slave to the the merchant
Mm-hmm.
to that you're going to repay them,
Mm-hmm.
and that it means you're going to work for them. You're working for them,
Mm-hmm.
not for yourself.
Yeah.
Or whatever that you owe them, the money that you're earning.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
So that's why I hate rent centers and places like that. I believe those places take advantage of people that, as I mean, you look at that stuff and it's way more expensive than
it's a 5 times markup. I used to work for one. I used to be able to. There was a guy on one of the Lexington channels from our company explained why that it was actually cheaper to to buy from us than to buy it from somewhere else. But anyway, it was a 5 time markup.
Yeah.
You're buying, $200 TV. You were paying $1,000 for it.
And if you made it, $700 in and didn't pay it off, then you just lost it.
Right, but yeah.
I learned that the hard way with the washing machine and dryer.
But it was easy to prove whenever that your interest rate on the credit cards were 30, and it was doubling every 2 years.
Yeah.
It's a 48 month of payment on a TV. Probably you were actually it was cheaper than putting it on your credit card.
But probably, yeah. Now that I think about it.
But we don't think about these things.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason, it's very tempting, to at one time, the other day we talked about, flipping houses.
Mhm.
Well, the last time I flipped houses, I had a $25,000 Lowe's credit card,
Mhm.
but they charge 28 to 30% interest.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to do it that way. I don't want to flip houses unless I have the money to buy the materials
Yeah.
to to
Finish them out.
to finish them out.
Yeah.
And it's just a different way of thinking, but people don't think of that way today.
Well, and it's because we're not taught to think that way. I mean, and that all boils back to our schooling, education, and the school system. To be honest, all the financial knowledge that I have, I had to go out and learn outside of school. I did like the Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University.
Right.
I
I've
did
taken it twice.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I've done several of
Yeah,
those different
I
financial guides.
Listen to his audio book.
Mhm.
That's a really good. Whenever I was selling Legal Shield,
Mhm.
Bill Hall, he gave me the book and said, listen to this. This is one of the required listening to become a salesman."
I mean, it's a good one.
It is, but for those of you who haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, basically he saw it as liabilities and assets.
Mhm.
Your house is a liability. You would think it's an asset, but it's a liability because you have to pay taxes on it.
Mhm.
And then but a rental property is an asset because you receive an income on it. Anything you receive an income is an asset. Anything that you don't receive an income is a liability. So that takes it even another step of where Dave Ramsey takes it in Financial Peace Partners, and where that you're not a slave. They could think you're a slave to your home. Having to pay taxes on it. You're a renter.
I mean, you basically are. You are going to pay taxes even after the property's paid up.
Right. Anyway, Liz.
Yeah.
We are. I think that answers your question about selling your soul, right?
Yes.
So now you understand, because
Yes,
that was your confusion, right?
It was, and that makes a lot of sense now. Because what I was always or well, not always told, but I've been told by people is people say that they sell their soul to the devil, but
Right.
I was always told that you can't sell something that you don't own, that God owns your soul.
Well, there was an interesting thing I learned the other day. Did you know that Joe Namath sold his basically sold his soul to the devil to win the Super Bowl?
What?
I had never heard that. You don't even know who Joe Namath is.
Oh, wait, no, I didn't hear who you said. It sounded like you said Job.
Joe Namath.
Okay, yeah, I know who that is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I had never heard that until the other day. Somebody pointed it out that he won the Super Bowl and that New York Jets,
Mhm.
is that who it was?
I think so.
They had never won
A Super Bowl.
they've been like 0.4 the rest of since then. But
I mean,
so it does happen today.
Yeah.
we hear more and we think of it more of, in music is that, that people
Hollywood.
talk about that they have, that there's songs written about
Yeah.
the
The crossroads.
crossroads and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think people do it all the time and don't realize what they're doing. It's like playing
Yeah.
Ouija
board.
kid playing with Ouija boards in cemeteries. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they probably are actually uh, dealing with demonic spirits that they don't want to be dealing with. They're conjuring them up and that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of people do a lot of things that they don't realize what they're doing. Well, in this case, they can actually sell their soul by taking the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
That's what just came to me.
Yeah, that makes sense now too. You say that.
Yeah. So they are giving their by taking the mark, they are uh, uh, giving it to the Antichrist. Now I remember we had this little Sunday school lady at White Oak, and her husband was an alcoholic, and she'd tell him now, "Don't take the mark of the beast, or you're going to go to hell." And we always said he'd be the first one down there taking the mark of the beast. But what she didn't realize is God is going to seal those who are not going to take the mark of the beast. So we really, it's going to be really difficult to not do that in that time.
Yeah.
You can't buy food or anything. So we've already kind of covered that. So the second paragraph there.
All right. So skip over the merchants of these things.
I thought
That's where I am, is the merchants of these things.
Yes, that's the
The second of
the first full paragraph.
Yeah. The merchants of these things who grew rich by her shall stand afar off because the fear of her torment, saying, "Alas, alas." The the Greek word for "alas" doesn't. Yeah, I know. I started circling over to read the same thing. The Greek word for "alas" does not need to be translated to get its meaning. It is
Ooh, AI. Ooh, I.
I was gonna say oi oi.
Yeah, no. Oi, oi. Heather would say that.
Right. Oh,
As a stress word.
yes.
Oi. Maybe it is oi because really
Oi day.
he has a doctor's degree and he taught Greek in seminary. So I don't want to argue with the man. But the way I was taught is that the is right is well, you got a whole bunch of vowels, so that means the O is long.
Yeah.
And O and the A it's OUAI. So the OU and A could be long and the I is silent.
Yeah.
So maybe OU OUA OUA.
Oh yeah.
But he pronounces the Greek different than I was taught, but he was a Greek professor, so I'm like, maybe I was taught. I could look it up. That's we're talking about looking things up earlier. I'm seeing a lot of things I could have looked up, but I don't.
I mean, yeah, it's just I'm a curious person. When I don't know something, I like to look it up.
Well, the pronunciation, it is,
Yeah.
where Schofield tells you how to pronunciate it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
For in 1 hour, wealth so great is laid desolate. We always have been able to find a parallel in the Old Testament. Do we have anything that corresponds to this in the past? Yes. Ezekiel predicted the judgment of Tyre, the capital of the Phoenicians. Tyre was to the
Tyre.
ancient Tyre. Tyre was to the ancient world that New York City. So the reason I pronounced that Tyre was because there's a sci-fi show that I watch, and one of the main characters' name is Tyr Anasazi, and his name is spelled like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's pronounced Tyr. But that's a person's versus a place.
Well, yeah. Using the rule that there is TYRE,
Tyre.
the Y should be long because of the E, but anyway.
Let's see, the ancient world. That New York City is to us today, and what Babylon will be to the future. See Ezekiel 26 and 27. All right, and see we're
That concludes section verses 11 through 17, and now we're moving on to section verses 17 through 19.
yes. All right. And every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, "What city is like unto this great city?" And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, "Alas, alas, that great city where made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her coastlines, for in 1 hour she made desolate." Revelations 18:17 through 19.
The biggest absurdist translation
Is and every shipmaster and every one that sails anywhere, traveler and sailors, and those who live by seafaring stood afar off, and cried out when they looked upon the smoke of her burning, saying, "What city is like the great city?" And they cast dust upon their heads and cried, weeping and mourning, saying, "Woe, woe," or "Oi, oi."
Ooh, AI, ooh, AI.
The great city wherein all that had their ships in the sea were made rich by reason of her
Costly.
costly expenditures. Yeah, for in 1 hour she made desolate. The third delegation of mourners is composed of those who are engaged in transportation and the great public carriers. They had become rich by transporting the merchandise of Babylon, just as the Phoenicians had done in the ancient world. Now there is no more business. They mourn because because of the depression. All went up in smoke in a moment. They, like the others, marvel in the sudden destruction. All of this is an application for us. How do we see the luxury of this world? Do we see it as it really is? Can we use it without getting it into our hearts? How would you feel if the luxuries in your life, which you have come to consider necessities, suddenly went up in smoke? Today, we speak about spiritually and spiritual things. Even in our Christian organizations, there is almost an overweening zeal to get people to give, especially the wealthy people. Recently, some wealthy persons threatened to withdraw their support from my radio ministry if I did not do a certain thing, and I did not listen to their threats. It seemed to me that we have paid too much attention to this world today. The world is passing away, and the things you see at your fingertips are also passing away. The great cities of the world are passing away. Los Angeles is a wonderful city, and I have enjoyed the city because I have lived in Southern California for many years. Boy, that place has changed.
That's again, not me.
But it is passing away.
I told them, there's statistics came out in the 50s that Los Angeles was 98% white population, and now it's like in the 30% or something
Wow.
like that. The the replacement theory.
Yeah.
And so is what I was hearing. The statistics of, and so he moved there. I don't know exactly when. I can't remember. That's one thing I don't know about him, but I ought to learn. But he moved there when there wasn't very many people there either. I remember some people have talked about when Hollywood, was there was a fruit stand or something. Whenever Hollywood first became Hollywood, they built it up from nothing. In other words,
Yeah.
So, but anyway, go
ahead. God is going to judge Los Angeles, but the question is, would it break your heart if you saw the things of this world go up in smoke, or is your heart in heaven, fixed on Christ? Does it make a lot of difference?
So that concludes section verses 17 through 19. Now we're going to move on to section verses 20 through 23. And the title of this section is
Anticipation of Joy in Heaven because of Babylon's Judgment. All right. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. Revelations 18:20.
And the McGee's Absurdist translation is
Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye saints, and ye apostles, and ye prophets, for God hath judged your judgment on her. The viewpoint of heaven is entirely different. It is no funeral procession there. Rather, it is a celebration of an anticipated event. The saints prayed for it. The prophets of the Old Testament and the apostles of the New Testament predicted it. Now all is fulfilled, and there is joy because God exonerated his name. Judgment has come upon these things. Just what is your heart fixed on today? It will make a lot of difference in that day because you will either be with the mourners or you will be with the rejoicers. Let's see. Okay, 20. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, "Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all." Revelations 18:21.
The McGee's Absurdist translation is
And one strong angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, "Thus with a mighty rush shall Babylon, the mighty city, be cast down and shall be found no more at all." Even heaven calls our attention to the violence, the suddenness, and the complete annihilation of Babylon, like a stone that makes a big splash and then disappears beneath the waves of Babylon, come to an end.
McGee moved to Los Angeles in 1949. I looked it up. But so that concludes section verses 20 through 23. Now we're going to continue on to section verses 22 through 24.
Great. Oh, this one. Or yeah, this one says 23.
Yeah, it is. I'm wondering if he overlapped.
Oh, maybe.
He does that sometimes. No? Okay, maybe I misspoke then. That was section verses 20 and 21.
Oh, okay.
That's it. And so now we're moving on to section verses 22 through 24.
23.
No, 24.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
We're going to pick up 24 here.
Okay.
I'll have to tell you. Yeah.
Oh, there's 24. Okay, I was like, man, I don't see 24 anymore. Okay.
And stopped reading that this chapter brings to.
This chapter brings to a conclusion.
Yeah.
Okay, stop reading that.
Yeah, stop reading.
All right. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in thee, and the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. Man, that really is talking about like the complete and utter annihilation of Babylon.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think it's interesting. A candle will not be seen in the.
Yeah.
And remember, it says a city set on a hill that cannot be hid.
Yeah.
The Bible says, well, it's going to be hidden. That's what you won't be able to see it.
Yeah. So, wow. All right. uh,
I'm surprised that he doesn't. Well, he told the Israelites that the destruction of Jerusalem would be so bad that the people around it would hiss as they walk back by. And but anyway.
all right. Again, using my translation and the voice of harpers and uh, minstrels and flute players and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. You see, rock music will go out of style then, and thank God for that. Rock.
Oh. Yeah, he is. Well, he's not a big fan of Christian music either.
Oh, well, fair enough.
Him and Cecil will get along great, but other than Cecil, well, anyway.
All right.
He would use big words, and Cecil would be like, "What are you talking about?" and bring him into check.
All right. And no craftsman of whatsoever craft shall be found any more at all in thee, and or all the factories will close down, and the light of a lamp shall shine no more at all in thee. All the neon lights on Broadway will go out.
It puts a lamp or a light under a bushel.
Mhm.
But so anyway, again, this is reminding me where it's talking about other passages.
Yes. And the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. It's all over. No more marrying and giving in marriage here. For thy merchants were the princes of the earth, for with thy sorcery were all the nations deceived. I believe that more and more we are going to see sorcery, magic, and demonism. Well, ain't that the truth? I mean, heck, you can just watch anything on TV, movies, TV shows. I mean, they all seem to be, especially kids stuff, really seem to be focused around magic and things like that. And it seems more prevalent in almost all cartoons these days. I mean, it's gotten crazy, and they do it in such a way that it makes it seem innocent. So, like one of the movies that I used to love was the Medea movies.
Oh yeah,
The Medea's, Jay, and all those Medea movies. I used to love those movies, and then I realized that the whole him dressing up as a woman and acting like a woman and things like that, that goes directly against what the Bible talks about. And there was a whole lot of things that falls into and desensitizing. I mean, that should not be allowed. That should not be okay. You should not be doing that.
right.
And so, but I didn't even think of it. My mom, who is, she's the one that raised me on the altar and taught me how to pray and taught me all these Bible verses. She's the one that showed me Medea, and she thought it was funny until she realized the same thing.
Right. Well, it was comedy.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like blackface used to be comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
yes,
they would probably consider Medea an insult, though, to their cause.
True. Well, yeah, I guess.
I don't know.
I guess I don't know. Like, yes and no, but I mean, if
it's like what I'm saying is that's like somebody wearing blackface.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, but at the same time, it desensitizes people to seeing men dress up as women.
I know that they've tried to use against J.D. Vance, where that he dressed up for a Halloween party.
Oh, yeah.
And that sort of stuff.
We all have our mistakes.
Well, I used to dress up as a witch when I was a kid. You're really talking about me. Desensitized.
Fair enough.
When my kids came along, I dressed them up as princesses, heroes. Tim was a buccaneer. But yeah, I guess we have to take. We don't think about those things.
Yeah. Let's see. I lost my place completely, actually.
I've been after sorcery and
Yeah. Merchants.
we worked down there.
Cringe. Getting marriage.
Oh, okay. The last paragraph.
Magic.
On the left-hand side.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And demonism. Satanism will increase more and more as we draw near the end of the age. It will be Satan who is going to deceive and blind people just as he blinds many in our day. Okay. Popular music. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
Okay.
Popular music comes to an end in Babylon. Jazz and rock and roll cease in the destruction. Classical music will be stilled also. The crafts that have been prostituted to the service of the Antichrist will end. The wheels of the factories will never turn again. The bright lights of the cities will go out forever. It will be interesting to note that the beginning of all these things, as recorded in Genesis 4:16 through 22, also social life and family life shall end. The great tycoons of big business will disappear. This city deceived the world with the worship of Antichrist. This is the strong delusion. All right, and then on to 24.
Verse 24.
In her found the blood of prophets and the saints, and all of that were slain upon the earth. Revelations 18:24. All right. God's people got rough treatment in this city, and God judged it. This is Satan's city, and he was a murderer from the beginning. Babylon was a city that murdered. Its final crime was the slaying of God's people. As we contemplate the destruction of Babylon, we think of other great cities and civilizations of the past which have fallen. One of the most widely read books of all time is The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, written by Edward Gibbon in 1788. It was given 5 basic reasons why the great civilization withered and died. Number 1, getting it this time. Number 1, the undermining of the dignity and sanctity of the home, which is the basis for human society. Number 2, higher and higher taxes, the spending of public money for free bread and circuses.
Yes.
For the populace. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 3, the mad craze for pleasure sports becoming every year more exciting, more brutal, and more immoral. Makes sense. Number 4, the building of great armaments when the real enemy was within, the decay of individual responsibility. Number 5, the decay of religion, faith fading into mere form, losing touch with life, losing power to guide the people. The oft heard warning that history repeats itself has an ominous meaning in the light of the above. We can already see these 5 things at work in our contemporary culture in this country. Yes. The same things will bring Babylon down at the end. They destroy the nation and the home and the individual. Thank God the sad story of man's sin will come to an end. This chapter.
Okay. And that concludes the section, verse 20 2 through 24, and now we'll move it on to a section he entitled Review, where it looks like J. Vernon McGee one day comes back and decides to review. We're up to where we are at this point. And so I guess you can go on. I was going to talk about this, but that's all right. Maybe I'll take a picture and put it on Facebook.
Okay. All right. This chapter brings to a conclusion the frightful period which was labeled by the Lord Jesus Christ the Great Tribulation. In the next chapter, we will see him coming to the earth to bring to an end this dark, doleful, and disastrous period. This is the negative aspect to his coming. The positive side is the dawning of the day of the Lord, called the millennium or 1,000 years in chapter 20. Now, let's take a final look at the Great Tribulation period with its catastrophic and cataclysmic events taking place in rapid succession like a machine gun firing. The total period is 7 years. It is the 70th week of Daniel's prophecy in the Old Testament. Daniel divided it. And in the New Testament, John divided it into two separate equal periods of 3 and 1.5 years each. However, after the church leaves this earth, the Antichrist comes to power as world dictator on a platform of peace, prosperity, and fame. During the first part of the tribulation, he will bring about radical changes that seem to benefit mankind. He will bring in a false peace. All government uh, and religion are to be controlled by him. When that time comes, there will be one world, one religion, and one everything. The world will believe that they are entering the millennium and that the world will become a utopia. This is part of the big lie of that period. The truth church, the body of Christ will be removed from the earth before the tribulation begins. It will become the bride of Christ, and we will see this bride shortly, near the end of this book. Israel will once again become God's witness on earth, 144,000 strong, sealed by the Spirit of God, and they will witness here upon the earth. Also, there will be a great company of Gentiles that will be sealed. Somewhere near the middle of the 7 year period, the king of the north, and I believe it will be Russia, will move against Israel. God will judge Russia just as he judged Sodom and Gomorrah. If you want to see that picture, you will find it in Ezekiel 38. This opens the floodgates of war. The Antichrist now begins to move, and the deception, I think, will become apparent to a great many folk, restless mankind under the control of Satan, begins to march. The world begins to fall apart like a pear that is too ripe. The man of sin, the Antichrist, breaks his covenant with the nation of Israel.
You know, I don't know if you realize what's been going on. They tell me that about 17 years ago, China kind of broke up from this one world government kind of thing that they were doing and started doing their own thing.
Mhm.
And then it seems like the kind of, uh, you know, Trump is saying, America is, reinforcing the Monroe Doctrine, taking over Greenland, Venezuela, wanting to, kidding about Canada. And basically telling Europe, Ukraine's their problem. And, leaving Russia to kind of dominate that area, and China to, kind of, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't take over Taiwan without us
Yeah.
doing much. Kind of like dividing the world up into our own little segment, and you stay out of our segment.
Yeah.
I don't think people are seeing that, but that's seems to be going on
Mhm.
below the
Surface.
the surface,
Yeah.
especially after Davos, whenever they're basically told your one world
Yeah.
idea is dead. Go home. And so I think this opens up for then Russia to come
Mhm.
down. But I think I always thought it was interesting as I've studied this. It's actually I think it's Gog is Russia and Magog is is China. We
Mhm.
think we think
Yeah. We
or
talked about
they've
that before.
always said that,
Mhm.
but it's interesting to me when they talk about Gog, it's the region where, and I was going to look that up the other day, where Job went,
Mm.
but I think it was in Iraq, wasn't it?
I think so. I don't.
It,
It's
it
well,
wasn't that far north, but it talks about these people who the Gogs being
Mhm.
very brutal people, and the Ukrainians have always, and it's that region
Mhm.
of where the Donbass region
Mhm.
is the Gog region, and
Mm.
and so that it's all that's part of this fulfilling prophecy to me
Mm.
is Russia gets control of the Donbass region where these brutal people who are called Gog come
Mhm.
from, and that's where they're going to come down, and it's opening up to wink wink, it's okay
Yeah.
to take over the Middle East,
Mm.
um,
Okay, that makes sense.
or Europe, or that region, and so that kind of is I was always looking for we've been talking looking for one world government
Mhm.
government,
Mhm.
but they're going to come against they're warring against each other.
Mhm. Yeah.
Still, in chapter halfway through the tribulation, they're all going to turn against the peace is over.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Yeah.
in this, and they're going to come after. We have always thought that they're going to come after Israel, but it's kind of like they're going to come to have a world war
Mhm.
with the Antichrist, Russia and China, because they
Yeah.
or Israel. Because we learned that um, he he breathed out these frog creatures. That
Mm.
was one of the bowls
Mhm.
that stirred up the hearts of these people, Gog
Mhm.
and Magog, to come and attack Israel.
Mhm.
But to me, that's where the religious the religious Babylon has moved to
Mhm.
from uh, from Rome, as we kind of learned a couple of chapters ago. But anyway, it's kind of confusing. But it still sounds like to me that what's going on in the world, even though I've always heard that we're going to one world government, all this,
Mhm.
even though we're kind of separating into
Mhm.
three entities,
Yeah.
that the that help will help uh, bring Russia down against Israel. But
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean that sounds plausible. I mean, I know that in the tribute, I know at least the little bit that I remember about the tribulation period is that there is a time of peace,
Right.
and then I think it's what, like halfway through
Yeah.
is when
That's
the
where we're
war,
at.
yeah, is where the war comes. Um, and yeah, I mean, that to me, looking at, globally, I mean, that looks like the most, uh, that looks like that looks like how it would play out. They look like the best candidates to be Gog and Magog.
Right.
And
And Magog can even include India and like Indonesia. You got
mm,
it's a populous.
mhm,
You got those are the three most populated countries in the world.
mhm,
Coming in, the river Euphrates will be dried up, and then
mhm,
they can come across. And but after the destruction of Babylon, I would think that the Antichrist now his seat's gonna. The reason they're coming against Jerusalem is because they're coming against the Antichrist.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, is but everybody's thinking Well, I even heard Chuck Smith the other day that that's how it's going to start off the tribulation period. No, that's how the tribulation period is going to end.
Yeah.
And then the millennial reign's going to end with another
Yeah.
battle that he called this one Harmageddon. The other one is Armageddon.
Mm.
And the uh, the battle of Armageddon. This is the war of Armageddon.
Mm.
This one world war that's
Yeah.
breaking out. Anyway, go ahead and read it.
Down at the bottom paragraph.
I have a tendency to comment.
No, no, it's good. Okay. Let's see. The Mid East.
Yes.
The Mid East will become the center of world activity during this period. Babylon will be the political and economic capital of the world, and Jerusalem, also called Babylon, will be the religious capital. The Antichrist will begin in Rome, and the false prophet will begin in Jerusalem. Antichrist, when he comes to power, will rebuild Babylon. The apostate church will be destroyed by Antichrist and by the kings of the earth who will be subservient to him. Ancient Babylon on the Euphrates River will become the political and economic center of the world. If a small nation in the Mid East can turn off the spigot to stop the flow of oil and thereby bring the world to its knees, what will it be when ancient Babylon in that very area becomes again the world center? New York will be New York City will then be a whistle stop on the Tunerville trolley, or not even worth the legendary string of uh, glass beads. Los Angeles will return to an Adobe village and no longer will be the city of angels, but a dwelling place of demons. Kind of seems like it already is.
It's not Adobe Village yet, though.
No, but dwelling of demons.
Well, it sort of is the encampments.
Yeah. It appears as if
They're
they.
living in teepees again.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's bad out there. It appears as if they are already beginning to move in. There we go. And this is back then when he wrote this.
In the early 70s, yeah. Well, it's come full circle. Well, I mean, that was, I don't know when the Bohemian Grove came in. Was that the late 60s, early 70s that everybody,
Yeah, I think it
the
was.
Satan worship was involved?
Yeah.
Because I know the daughter of the guy who started the Satan worship out there is about my age, and she, so I'm thinking it was all starting to explode at that time, just like it is today.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the things. I don't know if you knew this, but like I showed LaRonda, I looked it up at Davos. I had to trick AI into, it was considered a conspiracy theory that they're all Satanists. So I said, "Oh, good. Tell me all the conspiracy theories." Well, there's a tapestry that they had in their main hall where they came in, and the tapestry is of Revelations, the Virgin giving birth and the Satan eating the baby.
Oh wow.
There, yeah, and so it seems very satanic to me.
A little bit.
Especially if you look at this tapestry. I don't know the entire meanings because it's supposed to be through history, which and so we were talking about earlier. So Satanism is becoming more and more out there and open. And you have all these world leaders, and right there where they're entering. I think it was like where they were entering the main hall. It was the tapestry there that they all went under. Anyway, and so it's kind of repeating itself. It kind of had, I guess, in the 80s and 90s, we had a revival. People, kind of went more underground in the 2000s, but
Yeah.
but it's like in the late 60s, early 70s. You had Satanism and it sprang out in the Bohemian Grove, and now they're having all these things.
Well, I mean, it carried all the way up into the 90s even, because I remember the house that my parents lived in before the one that they're in now. It was the first house that we moved to when we moved to Ohio, and there had been in the cellar there had been satanic rituals done. There was pentagrams and candles, and there were animal skeletons.
Well, I'm not saying that it hasn't
gone away completely, yeah, but
that it hasn't been going on all along.
yeah.
I mean,
I just hadn't seen anything. It was like it would even make news during like Halloween that people needed to keep an eye on their cats because the people were doing stealing people's cats and sacrificing them.
Right.
And so like I remember seeing that on the news, and like
Well,
I haven't seen anything like that.
people talking about probably our leaders, were Satanists, and if we really knew what they did in their spare time, then that would be interesting.
Yeah.
If our local leaders,
Yeah.
and they were all getting in trouble for the cornbread mafia, whatever it was called. They were all dealing drugs and going to prison, spending weekends in prison.
Yeah.
But and arresting, say the county attorney arrest um, a state trooper for selling him drugs,
Oh my God.
or vice versa. I don't know. But anyway,
Go ahead. All right.
maybe we could continue reading. Where we're judged.
Yes, London.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. I already began moving in. London and other great cities of the world will become mere villages with muddy streets. Judgments from God will fall swiftly and suddenly on a God rejecting and blaspheming world. And that's heck, we've got what was it, even Hollywood not too long ago, they were doing some kind of award show, and the announcer even said, this is a godless town, and they were bragging on. And then shortly afterwards, all those fires came through, interestingly enough. When all those fires were blowing through Hollywood and all that happened shortly after that. Yeah. Um,
Well, but we covered last chapter was about the church.
Mhm.
The apostate church.
Mhm.
We have in our church where people are they don't believe in God. They believe they're God, which is in a way a blasphemy of God.
Yeah.
That's what the Antichrist is going to do. He's going to sit in the temple of God, saying he is God, and expecting people to worship him as God. And
Yeah.
so that's not too far from we see that working its way into the church.
Mhm.
That's why that we have to be on guard for those things.
Yeah.
We're not. We're like everybody come in. We're lovey dovey. We love everybody, but we have to say, no. You can't You're not a god, and we're not going to worship you.
Yeah.
Go along your way. We don't teach that. But anyway, go ahead.
At one fell swoop, 1/4 of the population of the world will be destroyed. And at another time, 1/3 will be blotted out. Wow, a fourth and then a third.
Yes.
Na-
Yeah. If I let's say a fourth and a third was 12s, 3 and 4 is 7/12.
oh, wow.
Yes. And
Wow.
and that was with just the trumpets and the scrolls.
Yeah.
And see, one of the things we learned last chapter, to catch you up, is we learned that those were probably, see, we see that where that man is bringing it upon himself.
Mhm.
Like the mass migration in Europe is sort of like suicide.
Mhm.
We like what's going on in our country. It's sort of we have people committing suicide.
Yeah.
The heckler suicide.
Yeah.
But it's and so see that destruction. They want the Great Reset, which basically means let's take us back to the Stone Age. They, through biological, so they want to, which they just said that China took from a lab in Canada, and Canada didn't stop them, a whole bunch of more viruses. And so they want to wipe out the majority of the population, and then famine. They want to, we got China and Bill Gates, that owns most of the farmland in the world, and Ukraine is the food bowl of Europe and Africa.
Well, then you got Monsanto with the GMOs and all that stuff too.
Right. Yeah. And so it's man created. The this is, and so God, when He pours out the bowls, He's like, well, that's what you can do. Let me show you what I can do. I'll wipe out the rest of them.
Yep.
Is so he destroys the all of the inhabitants of the waters, and same plagues that was in Egypt.
Yeah.
Basically, now that I'm wrapping my head around it, the trumpets and the um, scrolls are sort of like the magicians saying, here, that here, I can do what you can do. And then God is coming back with the bowls and then saying, no, you can't do it the way I can. You can change this little bowl of water into blood, but not the Nile River.
Yeah.
And so he changed, so that's
okay. Yeah.
So it helps you to understand these things. And one of the things is metatauta that was there is, it's a progression. We're moving through revelations. It was one of the things I talked to you about my doctor.
Yes.
That was my pastor when I surrendered. One of the things he tried to say, I don't know if he was trying to get me to think or what, but he said, well, how do you know Revelations is in order? Well, it is in order. And so by the metatauta, you know that these things happen because of things before it.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway,
cool.
That we're kind of reviewing what we've
already gone over.
What we've already gone over in Revelations here in this section. Nature
will be nature will be afflicted, the grass and the trees of the earth, the sun, moon, and stars in the heavens. One disaster after another will fall on the earth, but the heart of man will still be unrepentant. In fact, he will defy and blaspheme the God of heaven. Then armies will march towards Israel. For 3.5 years, the war will rage. It is not the battle of Armageddon, but the war of Armageddon. Millions of men will march at the time in that, or march at a time in that land. They will be engaged in a conflict there, but they will be destroyed. There will be blood up on the bridles of the horses, about 3 feet deep. That is no exaggeration. Into the horrible arena of chaos, the chaos of man's making and of Satan's scheming, comes to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Yes, the King is coming to the earth, but before all this can take place, his church must be removed from the earth and go to be with him. Then the church will be return. Then the church will return to the earth with him when he comes to establish his kingdom. The church is not looking for the fulfillment of any of these things which we have looked at from chapter 4 through chapter 18. The church is looking for the blessed hope and the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. We do not know the day when Christ will return. We do not even know the period in which he will return. It may be soon. It could be today. On the other hand, he may not return for 100 years or even several hundred years. No one can say with certainty when the Lord will return for his church. Anyone who sets a date for the Lord's appearing is entirely out of order. Anyone who claims to know when the Lord will return has information that is not in the Word of God. The best that can be said today is that everything that is happening is significant. We live in a great period in the history of the world, but we can all say for sure is that our salvation is nearer than we first believed. The late Dr. Bill Anderson of Dallas, Texas, used to say, God is getting the stage all set. It looks like he's coming soon, but if he is not planning to come now, and since it would take a lot of doing to get the world in this position again, if I were the Lord, I would just come on now and take the church out of the world.
Like we were saying, so 55 years ago, the stage was set, and now the stage was set again. But it looks like that we're doing a reset.
Yeah.
I don't know. But maybe even more closer than we were. But
Yeah. Well, we hope he will come now, but all we know is that the terrors of the tribulation will take place after the church has been removed at the rapture. We have been given no signs by which to gauge the time of his return, but we do see the setting of the stage, and we see some very significant things happening in our day. Obviously, Western Europe is looking for a man strong enough to put the Roman Empire back together. And Antichrist is coming. They may not know it, but they are waiting for him. Also, we see great power in the north, Russia. Egypt is alive again. China was a sleeping giant that we woke up, and from that great population center, they are going to come marching out one of these days. Then the crowning scene of the setting of the stage is Israel, which is back in her land. Everything is in position. The church could be raptured out at any moment. The tribulation could begin, but it may not. We do not know the day or the hour.
and that concludes that section versus review. And that concludes that chapter. And I hope that you've enjoyed the reading of God's word. And so, with that, we've kind of covered the comments already, and I think I don't know that we've had any. I think we've had some comments, but they weren't related to religious material. Somebody commented on the old uh, Saturday Night Live of whoever ran for president. I can't remember her name, and it's so old. Oh, and then somebody tried to get me to hire them to promote the channel. I was like, that was an interesting thing. I received a message from Google today. I don't know if it was spam or not, but somebody sent me a text claiming to be from Google, wanting to hire me for $250 a day.
Interesting.
I know. All I have to do is sit all day long and rate places on Google Maps as with 5 stars.
Man, I do that for $250 a day.
But anyway, so uh, I think it's hilarious. Well, the guy had like one of his videos had like 40 views, and he had like 14 subscribers. And I'm always like, why would I trust you if you're nobody, your platform, if you're a bot? Yeah, if you're a bot. But anyway, so let's see, where am I? So, but I do encourage you to uh, comment, ask questions wherever you can. It was nice having Philip here to ask questions as we went through, as he read, ask questions on what he was reading. And but I want you to ask questions. I want you to make comments, and I'll take up those comments and questions wherever I find them, and then we'll take them up. Watch the next Waycast, and I'll take them up on the next Waycast. If you want to remain anonymous, you can. You can. We are a 501c3 corporation, and you can find us. We are Christ Recovery Ministry. You can't see yours, but they have. We're P.O. Box 336, Berea, Kentucky 40403. The phone number is 859-339-7633. And so, with that, uh, did I turn it too far that way? Is that the problem? Anyway, so contact us, and if you wish to remain anonymous, please opine. Name and town would be nice, I suppose. And with that, we have, I don't know how long we've been in here, but I'm sure the girls are getting worried.
Oh, wow, my butt's getting sore.
Yeah. And with that, oh, it does have a padded seat. But with that, we say, you'll know you'll always remain in my heart. Good night. Heather said, good podcast. And the prayer every dream comes true. And now till we meet again. Adios, au revoir, have a good day. Good night, mates. And don't ever forget, you are truly loved. And with that, we say good night. Very happy show. Song confessions through the years.